The pressure is already building around the All Blacks, but former New Zealand great Josh Kronfeld has delivered a message that could change the way supporters judge Dave Rennie during the upcoming Springboks series. New Zealand are preparing for one of the toughest challenges in world rugby, with 4 tests against South Africa ahead. 3 will be played in South Africa, before the rivalry moves to the United States for the final encounter. The first test is scheduled for August 22nd in Johannesburg. For most All Black supporters, the expectation is obvious. When New Zealand play South Africa, winning matters. But Kronfeld believes the bigger story is not simply whether the All Blacks win the series. For him, the real question is whether Dave Rennie is building a team that can eventually challenge for the 2027 Rugby World Cup. And that is a very different way of looking at this rivalry. The Springboks are not just another opponent. They are the back-to-back Rugby World Cup champions, and their recent success has made them one of the toughest teams in international rugby. The All Blacks, meanwhile, are entering a new era. Rennie has been given the responsibility of taking New Zealand towards the 2027 World Cup, after New Zealand Rugby decided that a change was needed following the previous coaching era. That means he has a huge job on his hands. He has to find the right players. He has to develop combinations. He has to establish a clear playing style. And most importantly, he has to build a team that believes it can compete with the very best. That is why Josh Kronfeld believes it would be unfair to judge Rennie purely on the outcome of this Springboks series. And there is certainly an argument behind that view. The All Blacks have already shown signs of improvement during the current tour. After an unconvincing opening against the Stormers, New Zealand responded with an emphatic 54-0 victory over the Sharks in Durban. They scored 8 tries and kept their opponents scoreless, giving Rennie plenty of reasons to be encouraged. Players such as Fia Finianganofo, Damian McKenzie, Geordie Barrett, Kyle Preston, Tamosi Tavatavanawai and Sam Diari all contributed to an impressive performance. But the real test is still coming. The Springboks are a completely different challenge. South Africa will bring enormous physical pressure, a powerful set piece and a level of tactical experience that can punish even small mistakes. And Rassie Erasmus knows exactly how important this rivalry is. The Springboks will not be thinking about helping New Zealand develop. They will be thinking about winning. That is what makes this series so fascinating. The All Blacks are trying to build for the future, while the Springboks are already operating at the highest level. For Kronfeld, however, the result should not be the only measurement. He wants to see how the All Blacks perform. He wants to see whether they stay in the fight. He wants to see whether they can handle the physical battle. And perhaps most importantly, he does not want to see New Zealand suffer heavy defeats where the game is effectively finished long before the final whistle. A close defeat could tell a very different story from a heavy defeat. If the All Blacks are still competing in the final 10 minutes, creating opportunities and forcing South Africa to work extremely hard for victory, that would provide valuable evidence that the team is moving forward. And if New Zealand can turn one of those close games into a victory, the confidence could grow rapidly. That is the bigger picture. The All Blacks do not simply need a result. They need belief. They need an identity. They need combinations that can survive pressure. And they need players who understand what is required when the opposition is the world champion. This is where Rennie faces one of his biggest challenges. International rugby does not provide unlimited preparation time. A coach cannot simply spend an entire season experimenting. There are only a limited number of tests before the World Cup arrives. Every match, therefore, becomes an opportunity to learn. Every selection matters. Every combination matters. Every tactical decision matters. And every injury can change the plan. The All Blacks have already experienced that reality on this tour. Wing Caleb Clarke has been ruled out of the South Africa tour after suffering a shoulder injury in the 54-0 win over the Sharks. He became the third All Blacks player to leave the tour through injury, following George Bell and Billy Proctor. But injuries can also create opportunities. One player's setback can give another player the chance to establish himself. That is exactly what makes squad depth so important. And it is one area where Rennie will be watching closely. The All Blacks need competition for positions. They need players pushing each other. They need experienced stars performing consistently. And they need emerging talent showing that they can handle Test rugby. The recent 54-0 win has already increased competition for places. That is a positive sign for Rennie. It means players are giving the coaching staff difficult decisions to make. And difficult selection decisions are often a sign of a healthy squad. There is also another fascinating development. Richie Mo'unga has returned to the All Blacks setup after being called up as an injury replacement for Billy Proctor. His return adds another major dimension to the backline selection battle ahead of the Springboks tests. Suddenly, the conversation becomes much bigger than one series. It becomes about what this All Blacks team could look like by the time the World Cup arrives. Who will be the fly half? Who will lead the attack? Which combinations will be trusted? Which younger players will make the final squad? Who will emerge as the leaders? These questions are exactly why Kronfeld wants people to look beyond the scoreboard. They can turn penalties into points. They can attack through their forwards. And they have the ability to change the momentum of a game through their replacements. That means the All Blacks cannot afford to lose concentration. For Rennie, this is a chance to discover exactly where his team stands. If the All Blacks struggle, he will learn where the weaknesses are. If they compete strongly, he will gain confidence in the direction of the team. And if they manage to defeat South Africa, the entire conversation around the new era could change. Imagine the All Blacks entering Johannesburg and producing an 80-minute performance where they match the Springboks physically. Imagine their defense remaining disciplined. Imagine their forwards holding firm. Imagine their backs creating opportunities. And then imagine New Zealand being in a position to win the match in the final minutes. That would be a major statement. But even if the result went against them, a performance like that could still tell Rennie something extremely valuable. It could show him that the players are capable of competing at that level. And that may be exactly what Kronfeld is talking about. The goal should not be to lower expectations. The All Blacks should always expect to win. But there is a difference between expecting victory and using one series as the final judgment on an entire coaching project. The World Cup is still the bigger prize. And Rennie needs to build towards that moment. By the time the 2027 World Cup arrives, there can be no uncertainty. The team must know how it wants to play. The players must know each other. The leaders must be established. The combinations must be tested. And the squad must have confidence that it can defeat the world's best. That confidence is built through experiences like the Springboks series. It is built by surviving pressure. It is built by learning from mistakes. It is built by winning close games. And sometimes, it is built by losing close games and refusing to repeat the same mistakes. That is why this rivalry could become an important chapter in the development of the All Blacks. The Springboks will provide the pressure. The All Blacks will have to provide the response. And Dave Rennie will have to turn whatever happens into information that can help the team become better. That is the challenge. And it is a huge one. Because South Africa are not standing still. Under Rassie Erasmus, the Springboks have continued evolving. They remain incredibly physical, but they have also shown greater attacking ambition. Former All Blacks great Josh Kronfeld has even identified South Africa attack coach Tony Brown as an important factor in the rivalry, highlighting the influence of the New Zealander on the Springboks' attacking approach. That adds another fascinating layer to the contest. A New Zealand rugby mind is helping shape the Springboks attack, while Rennie is trying to rebuild the All Blacks. So this is not simply a battle between two teams. It is a battle between two rugby philosophies that continue to evolve. The Springboks have proven that they can win through physicality and tactical control. The All Blacks want to rediscover their own identity. And somewhere in the middle, for huge tests await. For New Zealand supporters, there is plenty to be excited about. The 54-0 victory showed attacking variety. It showed defensive discipline. It showed squad depth. And it gave several players an opportunity to push their names into the selection conversation. But the Sharks match was only one step. The Springboks will be the real examination. And that is where the words of Kronfeld become so important. Do not judge everything on the result. Watch the performance. Watch the response. Watch the mentality. Watch the physical contest. Watch how the All Blacks deal with adversity. If they can stay close to South Africa, compete for 80 minutes and show clear signs of improvement, then there will be reasons for optimism. If they can go one step further and win, then the confidence around the team could change dramatically. But whatever happens, Dave Rennie needs to keep his eyes on the bigger prize. The Rugby World Cup. That is where his All Blacks project will ultimately be judged. And perhaps the most important thing between now and then is finding the team's identity. Because once the All Blacks know exactly who they are, they can begin worrying about how to beat everyone else. For now, the Springboks are the biggest challenge. They are the benchmark. They are the team New Zealand must measure itself against. And they will provide answers that no comfortable victory against a weaker opponent can provide. So when the All Blacks walk onto the field against South Africa, the pressure will be enormous. But perhaps the best way to watch this series is not simply to ask whether New Zealand win. Ask whether they look better. Ask whether they look more connected. Ask whether they look more confident. Ask whether they are learning. And ask whether the team taking shape under Dave Rennie looks capable of becoming something special by 2027. That is the challenge. That is the opportunity. And according to Josh Kronfeld, that is the standard by which this new All Blacks era should be measured. The Springboks series may produce wins, losses, moments of brilliance and moments of frustration. But the bigger story will be what New Zealand takes from it. If they can remain competitive, learn from every test and continue developing their identity, then this brutal rivalry could become exactly what Rennie needs. Not the final judgment, but another major step towards the World Cup. And if the All Blacks can turn those lessons into confidence, combinations, and consistency, the team that arrives at the 2027 Rugby World Cup could be very different from the one that takes on South Africa now. For New Zealand, that is the real mission. Build the team. Find the identity. Create belief. Compete with the best. And then, when the World Cup arrives, be ready for the biggest stage of all. The Springboks are the immediate test. The World Cup is the ultimate target. And Dave Rennie has 2 years to make sure the All Blacks are ready.